Some key concepts defined now on BBC Learning Zone in keywords.
Isolationism and internationalism. America's position in the world depends on how you look at it. One way of seeing America is as a continent in its own right, alone, isolated and self-sufficient. Another sees the United States as the centre of the world, is the dominant power throughout the Americas, and lies between Europe and Asia with dense connections to each. It's locked into a web of economic, political and cultural ties across the entire planet. At the centre, America sits like a shining castle on the hill. An example of free, prosperous and democratic society with a mission to spread those values around the world. Isolationism and internationalism have underwritten the two opposing approaches to American foreign policy throughout its history. Distance and internal conquest allowed the US to sit out most of the 19th century's imperial scrambles. Entry into World War I was a victory for the internationalists, but the isolationists in Congress and the country prevented President Woodrow Wilson from going any further down that road. America didn't even join the League of Nations that he created. World War II and the Cold War changed all that. America entered the world big time.
Washington, D.C. Washington is an anomaly. It is the political centre of the USA, but lies peripherally on its eastern coast. It is the seat of national government, but has the most limited control over its own affairs of any US city. Washington was chosen as the capital because it lay roughly halfway between the northern and southern extremities of the 13 original states in the USA. For 150 years, it remained a small town with little of significance beyond the institutions of government. It was only with the presidency of Franklin D. Roosevelt that the federal government began to assume an increasing importance in the governance of America. As the federal government has grown, so has Washington. Symbolically, it is defined and perceived through the institutions of political and military power: White House, Congress, the Supreme Court, the Pentagon, and the myths and mausoleums that surround them, the Lincoln, Vietnam, and Washington memorials. Washington also has its dispossessed. Government jobs and the construction industry brought waves of African Americans from the south to the city. Alongside the imperial and corporate architecture of downtown Washington sits the degradation and deprivation of the Southwest.
Migration. Levels of international migration are on the increase. People are flowing as ever from poor states to rich states. Western politicians panic about the threat of refugees and economic migrants. However, North Africans, Eastern Europeans and Turks have been moving northwards towards Europe for 40 years, along with the flows of migrant workers from ex-French and British imperial states. Over 1 million Latin Americans, Chinese, Koreans and Filipinos are moving to the United States every year. Most of the work no one else will do. Yet none of these flows match the slave trade and the mass migrations of Europeans to the Americas. For a century and a half, the British, Dutch and Portuguese ransacked Africa for human labour destined for the plantations of America and the Caribbean. At the same time, Europe's poor were pushed by famine into crossing the Atlantic Ocean, first from Britain and Northern Europe to North America, and from Spain and from Portugal to South America. Today, the options for the world's poor are much diminished. There are no open frontiers, no easy passage anywhere.
Spanning the cultural divide now on BBC Learning Zone, the OU travels to the USA for a Jewish wedding with a difference.
This is the wedding of Pamela Grant to Philippe Kohanim, who is a member of the large Iranian Jewish community. They are to be married by Rabbi Robbins.
What do you do when a congregant comes to you and says, Rabbi, my daughter, my son, is going to marry out?
I discuss conversion.
Look at each other.
There are probably 10,000 people a year in the United States or more who are converting to Judaism now, not only because of marriage, but because of personal interest.
I'm very, very happy. Very happy. My family is very happy because it was a big concern to my family of me marrying a non-Jew. So, of course, they met Pamela and they loved her right away. Being such a warm person, she is. So now it brought us much closer. My mother feels like she has another daughter.
I think that although my mother and my father, deep in their hearts, kind of, they brought me up as a Christian, and I think that they feel like if they had done a good job, I wouldn't have converted, which isn't true. And then my father, who's fairly well educated, he's a doctor, so he explained to everyone that Christianity had actually stemmed out of Judaism, and they're actually more similar than they are different. And he seemed pretty okay with it, so that set the tone for the family, and that made it a lot easier.
Philippe and Pam, you stand at the entrance to your chuppah, to your wedding canopy. Before you enter it, tradition teaches us you must make a clear commitment that you will be the center of each other's lives. When the veil was lowered over your face, Pam, you two separated yourselves from the past to come to commit yourself to each other.
I have to tell you that I was in college, and it was towards my end of my freshman year at the university, before I ever met a Jewish person. And I thought they were all in Israel, or I didn't even know that they really existed in the United States. We just don't have those where I'm from.
Anybody who's born in Boone, Iowa, entering a Persian Jewish family has a lot to learn. And I asked you, how would it have been coming into the family of Kohanim? And you said to me, from the moment you entered their house, you were like their daughter.
My family is one of the oldest, or the oldest Jewish family in Iran, and one of the most prominent families. And with the Shah being exiled, they were forced to leave or face persecution because of being Jewish and being prominent. So they had to leave everything behind and just flee the country. Actually, my father left on the same day when the Ayatollah was arriving in Tehran.
Your love becomes a bridge that brings these two families together and makes them one. Philippe, Pam brings you an incredible gift, a gift that very few women will ever give their husband. It is the gift of her soul and her faith.
Drop into the BBC Learning Zone website. From first aid in the classroom to curriculum management, get fired up about working in education. Let the OU enlighten you about everything from Cézanne to space exploration, or learn a language for that trip abroad. There's something for everyone, including listings for all BBC Learning Zone programmes. The address is www.bbc.co.uk/learningzone.
Do you fancy a career in, or are you already working in, local government? If you are, be it from char lady to chief executive, then the Working for Local Government series is for you. It features a range of programmes designed to help you with your work, your studies and your career. Working for Local Government is on BBC Learning Zone between 5 and 6 a.m. from the 6th to the 31st of March. See you there.
You can get more information about BBC Learning Zone on CFAX, pages 630 to 636. This is BBC Learning Zone for secondary schools. Now, the human body, a specially adapted version of the Spectacular series. This programme explores the intricacies of the human body and watches the amazing changes and processes that take place from conception to old age.
The human body, a compilation of secrets